Well, we want to talk about the recent debacle in which we have now elected our first openly Marxist president. I would have never thought that the country would come to this, but it has, and that's where we are. I want to, we got a lot that we can talk about on this, but I want to start off by saying something that I've noticed is a difference between when Clinton got elected. When Clinton got elected the first time in 1992, our phones lit up over the next few days. People were despondent and unhappy, and I used to have to talk people in off the ledge. You know, they were fixing to jump. That's what we used to call those. Was, you got another ledge call on line 3. Somebody's on the ledge fixing to jump.
Life dynamics or suicide hotline,
yeah,
same thing.
They're fixing to take a bath with their toaster. But I've noticed something that's fundamentally different this time. People aren't despondent, they're angry. Have y'all noticed that there's a complete different attitude?
I've gone from despondent and despair and weeping and gnashing of teeth to angry.
To anger. People are mad about this. And it's not just the abortion issue. That's a main one, obviously. It's the issue for us. But I think that people are angry that our country has come to this point, that we would elect a guy like this. But before we do that, before we talk about that, I want to bring up something.
But keep in mind, on the left side, everybody's very happy, Mark.
Oh yeah, I know. On the godless left, they're loving this. They're dancing in the streets. And of course, the media, which is part of the godless left, I mean, it's like he's literally being called the Messiah. I mean, Farrakhan has called him the Messiah, and the media.
Have you seen the new T-shirt?
No.
It's a dollar sign with his picture on it. Says, "In Obama we trust."
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the way the media is treating him. He is God. He is the Messiah. He has come to rescue us.
And in 4 years, they're still going to be poor, the people wearing those shirts.
Yeah. But I want to bring up something before we get into this discussion about this election. You know, a couple of years ago, I said something on this show that cost us some donors and some support. People were really angry. I got a lot of calls.
So now you can say it again.
I'm fixing to say it again.
Folks, there may not be a January issue.
No. Here's something I want to bring up, and I think people need to be thinking about this, because this is especially applicable to the pro-life movement. At the time, I said that George Bush might turn out to be the most dangerous president we ever had. And now we got one that's even more dangerous. But I said at the time he might turn out to be the most dangerous president we ever had because of the Patriot Act, the things that were going on with what they were putting in place. Right. And I had all these people. We lost donors. We lost supporters. We got people that were angry at us. I got nasty letters. I got phone calls. And
you're talking about, not the first one.
No, the one current president. Okay. And I remember one particular call, and it was kind of emblematic of them all. This lady is saying, you know, you've got to support the president. He's pro-life, and that's questionable, but he's pro-life, and these Patriot Act things are necessary to protect our country, and he can be trusted not to go overboard with these things. And I said, well, as I said on the show that day, I said, listen, you got to remember George Bush, even if you trust him on this stuff, and even if this unconstitutional stuff doesn't bother you, he won't be president forever. Yes. Now, what I want to know is, and I said at the time, what are you going to, because at the time it looked like Hillary Clinton was going to be the next guy. And I said, what are you going to feel like a few years from now if Hillary Clinton has those same powers that George Bush now has? Right. Well, now it's worse than that. I'd rather Hillary Clinton have them than Barack Obama. Me too. And now we've got an avowed Marxist with the morals of a sewer rat who has the powers of the Patriot Act that are unbelievable and unconstitutional. We've got these FISA courts. And on top of that, something that the media is not hammering on because they're in love with this guy, he is now calling for the establishment of a national police force.
That's right, a brown shirts.
We're going to have an SS or an SA division under Obama. He's calling for that. Whether he can pull it off or not, I don't know. But I just want all these people out here to think, are you now happy? Are you now comfortable going to sleep at night knowing that Barack Obama has the power to have people arrested, held with no trial, with no charges, tap phones, FISA courts, all these things, take your guns, all of these things that they thought were so great under Bush and so necessary. How comfortable are you now?
Well, the only difference is under this and the Clinton administration was it was illegal during the Clinton administration. Well, our phones were tapped. Right. Our mail was open.
Ours was too.
I was investigated by the FBI. We were investigated under VAPCON, and I was sued by Janet Reno. Right. All that stuff. And now it's going to be legal.
It's going to be perfectly legal.
Under Barack Obama.
Right.
The last jail time I faced, Janet Reno came to Buffalo, New York, hired special prosecutors because the regular federal prosecutors wouldn't touch the case. Right. And tried to put me away for 2 years simply because I prayed with teenagers and I encouraged teenagers who were on the street. And even though the teenagers did nothing illegal that day, they said one day Reverend Hunter's words of encouragement, one day caused them to feel one was right to choose. Right. And I was banned there from every abortion clinic, and I couldn't come within 2 miles of every abortion clinic in the state of New York.
And by golly, we had born-again Christians that voted for this guy.
Well, that's one thing I want to, that was the next thing I was going to talk about.
I don't have this.
We've got, let me just, we're talking, our buddy George Tiller, right? Let's say that, he's your buddy, Troy's buddy George Tiller. You're on his Christmas card list, I understand. Yeah, me too. But,
there's a hit list there.
Yeah.
But
let's just say we brought him into the studio here, and we said, hey, George, tell us, why is it that you do abortions? And let's just say he was just totally honest up front. He says, I do it because there's lots of money in it. I was a bad doctor. I couldn't get a practice going. This was a way for me to make lots of money.
Telling the truth for once.
So he'd, for one time, tell the truth in his life, and he says, I just did this for the money. People would be horrified if he said, yeah, it's an awful thing to do, but I do it for the money. They'd say, look, he's a mercenary. You know, he already kills about money. He doesn't care about the morality and so forth. All right. Let's fast forward now to this election. You've got all these people out here. We know, for example, 55% of Catholics, or people who call themselves Catholic, I don't think they are, because I think they're excommunicated by the fact that they voted for this guy. No different than the Protestants.
Right.
All these people that go to church, call themselves Christians, say they're born again, washed in the blood of Jesus and all this, out here voting for Obama, right? And you say, how can you do that? And I've heard this time and time again. Well, I'm uncomfortable with this position on abortion, but you know, the economy, we really got to do something about this economy. What they are saying is exactly what George Tiller would have said.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. What they're saying is, yeah, there's going to be a lot of babies killed because of this, but if it makes me money, I'm comfortable.
1992 all over again. Remember George Carville, it's the economy, stupid.
Right.
And that's what he ran on. That's what got Bill Clinton elected not once but twice. But I got to jump in here, Mark, and say this. The day after the election, I was up in South Dakota working on Measure 11. It lost by 5 points. I'm very disappointed by that. But on the way home, as I was driving back from South Dakota, I've rarely been as encouraged that day as I've been in a really long time. And it's because of this. Now we can take the gloves off. We don't have somebody in the White House that we have to somehow protect. This guy is radically pro-abortion, as Clinton was. And during the Clinton administration, we had more pro-life gains, more abortion clinics closed, the rate of abortion go down, more pro-lifers working together than ever before. And that's what I foresee happening right now. People are angry? Yes, they should be angry. It is long overdue to be angry. Absolutely. Now is the time to get angry and to get active.
You got to be angry. Babies are dying.
Absolutely.
And if you're not angry about that, then you need to go do something besides pro-life.
And
but Troy, I'm going to disagree with you about one thing. It's not going to happen. It's already happening. Let me tell you one of the other distinctions I saw.
People are working together and getting...
Right.
Okay.
But one of the other distinctions I saw is not only were people despondent in 92, but angry today. In 92, all the phone calls we were getting for the first few weeks were, oh, what are we going to do? The sky's falling, you know, abortion's going to be legal in the next 200 years, all that kind of stuff. We haven't had any of those calls. What we've been getting is people calling saying, what can I do?
Yes.
What can I do to help stop this thing? We've gotten new donors over it.
Yes.
We've had people calling saying, send me this information. I've been to your website. I got so angry the next morning, and I started looking at pro-life websites, and I went to your website. So I think that it's going to be even more activity over the next few years than there was during the Clinton times. Yeah. And you're right. You know, I've talked about this many times on the show. In 1992, there were over 2,100 freestanding abortion clinics. Today, there are fewer than 750.
Right.
Most of those closed. The vast majority of those closed during the 8 years that Clinton was president because the pro-life movement didn't sit back and say, oh, now we got somebody to do our work for us. We don't have to do anything.
And that brings me to one more point. I think that this election was also an indictment against the failed policies of those in the pro-life elite. And I won't even mention their names, but you know what? People that wait around for Supreme Court justices to die or think that the only thing pro-life you can do is elect the next Republican president. Right. There were people in South Dakota that said the only pro-life thing you can do is vote for John McCain and vote against a pro-life measure because it's not the right time. I've got news for you. Right. It's always the right time to save a baby. Right. It's always the right time. Today's the right day to jump in the pro-life movement and save a baby and get active and get involved.
Let me put my black spin to
Come on.
thing. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Because I tell you, it's so beautiful what God is doing. I love the whole thing. At first, I wanted people going like, oh, no. I prefer Sarah Palin, you know. For the pro-lifers out there really was a pro-life campaign.